everyone, we're Mimicker, here to introduce all kinds of knowledge, even the stuff we didn't know about. Today, we're plunging headfirst into one of the most enduring, fascinating, and let's be honest, kind of delicious rivalries in global business history.
Ah, the Cola Wars. Coca-Cola versus PepsiCo.
Exactly. And this isn't just, a simple scrap between two fizzy drinks. It's way more than that. It's like a century-long saga.
It really is. We're talking complex business strategies, huge cultural impacts, even the psychology of how we taste things.
Right. So our deep dive today is going to try and unravel all of that. Their strategies, the culture stuff, even, the taste buds. Think of it as your shortcut to really getting a handle on the massive power these global brands wield.
That's a great way to put it, because what's so fascinating here, I think, is that we are looking beyond just product competition. It's deeper.
How so?
Well, we're dissecting a real clash of business models, fundamentally different ways of operating. We're exploring how they built these massive brand images and even how they've shaped parts of our social identity.
Wow.
Yeah, through the lens of these two giants who basically dominated the consumer landscape for, over 100 years now? We can pull out some pretty surprising insights.
Right.
Things that apply way beyond just soda.
I'm really excited about this one. And for this deep dive, we've really gone through a ton of sources, like a comprehensive stack. We've got analyses that feel like they're straight out of, say, Business Week, covering the corporate strategy, the financials, that side of things.
Right, the hard numbers and strategies.
And then we pivot, looking at it through more of a social observation lens, getting into those really rich cultural narratives.
Which are just as important, if not more so sometimes, for understanding their power.
Totally. We synthesize a whole load of articles, academic research, industry reports, basically trying to bring you the most important nuggets so you don't have to wade through it all yourself.
Doing the legwork for you.
Exactly. So where do we even begin with this epic rivalry? It spans such a long time.
Well, if we're connecting it to that bigger picture, I think we have to start right at the beginning. Their origins. Because it's pretty remarkable how two companies, starting with, kind of similar intentions.
Both making cola drinks.
Right. Ended up forging these wildly different paths. And each path tells us something fundamental about, market positioning, brand building, even human psychology. Let's rewind. The genesis of the Cola Wars. A century of rivalry.
Okay, let's talk absolute genesis. The birth of the original cola. Coca-Cola. Its story kicks off in Atlanta, Georgia, way back in 1886.
The classic origin story.
Yeah, picture this. A local pharmacist, John Pemberton, he's tinkering in his lab. He mixes up this caramel-colored liquid, adds carbonated water, and bang, Coca-Cola is born.
Just like that. Well, almost.
Yeah, not quite an overnight global sensation, maybe, but the unique taste, it caught on pretty quickly.
It did. And then came the business side.
Right. Just 2 years later, 1888, this really sharp businessman, Asa Griggs Candler, he sees the potential, huge potential.
And he snaps it up.
He acquires the formula rights for what seems, honestly, almost unbelievable today. Just $2,300.
$2,300. Wow. That has to be one of the best ROIs in history.
Right. And by 1892, Candler had officially founded the Coca-Cola Company. And that really set the stage for, a global phenomenon.
And its rise was just meteoric. Seriously.
Yeah.
This wasn't some slow, gradual adoption curve.
It took off fast.
Incredibly fast. By 1913, so barely 2 decades after Pemberton first mixed it up, an astonishing 1 in 9 Americans had already tasted Coca-Cola.
1 in 9. That's incredible market penetration for that era.
It really is. It speaks volumes about its immediate appeal, but also, crucially, about the early power of branding. Even back then, capturing the public imagination, it quickly became more than just a drink. It was an experience.
And then there's the bottle. You know the one I mean.
Oh, yeah. The contour bottle. Iconic.
Instantly recognizable anywhere in the world. But here's a surprising fact. I found it was actually introduced in 1916 mainly to stop counterfeits.
Really? Not just for aesthetics?
Nope. Apparently there were so many imitators trying to pass off their own brown fizzy drinks as Coke. The company wanted a bottle so unique, so distinctive.
That you couldn't mistake it.
Exactly. They said you should be able to recognize it just by touch, even in the dark. Or even if it was broken into pieces on the ground.
Wow. That's a design brief.
Isn't it? It was a brilliant move. A total masterclass in how design can protect your IP and build this incredibly enduring, globally recognized brand identity. It really did change the game.
Okay, so while Coca-Cola is establishing itself as this Like American icon, almost unstoppable. What's happening with Pepsi?
Right. Pepsi-Cola emerges a few years later, founded by Caleb Bradham down in New Bern, North Carolina in 1893.
So not too far behind Coke, origin-wise.
No, but unlike Coke's relatively smooth ride, Pepsi's early days were, well, a brutal struggle is putting it mildly.
Also,
The company went through multiple reorganizations just in the 1920s alone. It was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy not once, not twice, but 3 times.
3 times. It's honestly amazing it survived at all, especially going up against such a dominant, established competitor like Coke already was.
It really is. So what was the turning point? What was the masterstroke that finally gave Pepsi a real fighting chance? How did it possibly claw its way back, especially when the whole country was heading into, economic collapse?
Okay, this is an incredible underdog story. It's a perfect example of innovation born out of sheer desperation, really.
Right.
So in 1931, right in the depths of the Great Depression, this visionary guy, Charles G. Guth, takes the helm at Pepsi-Cola.
Okay.
And he saw an opportunity not just in selling soda, but in offering value, real value, at a time when every single penny counted for people.
Makes sense.
His brilliant idea was launching a 12-ounce bottle, but selling it for just 5 cents, a nickel.
Okay, a 12-ounce bottle for a nickel. How did that compare to Coke?
Well, think about it. At the time, Coca-Cola was selling its standard 6.5-ounce bottle for the exact same price, 5 cents.
Wait, so Pepsi was offering literally almost double the quantity for the same nickel.
Exactly. Twice as much for a nickel, too, became their slogan. This incredible cost-effectiveness, appealing directly to the struggling consumer, drove massive growth. It gave PepsiCo a lifeline it absolutely desperately needed. It was classic market disruption.
Pure disruption through value. Did Coke just ignore that? Or were they maybe caught off guard by how aggressive that pricing was?
Well, Coca-Cola, being the established leader, was probably a bit complacent, maybe? Or perhaps they just underestimated the impacts of such a direct value proposition, especially during a depression.
They were focused on their brand, their image.
Exactly, their iconic brand. Consistent pricing, that was their strategy. And allowed Pepsi to carve out this crucial niche, building its base on pure accessibility and affordability.
Smart.
And then, much later, in 1965, Pepsi-Cola Company made another absolutely pivotal strategic move, one that fundamentally changed its entire competitive trajectory against Coke.
What was that?
They merged with Frito-Lay Inc., the snack company.
Ah, the chips. Lay's Doritos.
Right, this wasn't just some minor merger. It created the diversified giant PepsiCo that we know today, snacks and beverages. It set them on a completely different path from their main rival.
So already, just from the origins, we're seeing it's not simply about, which sugary drink tastes better.
Not at all.
As we dive deeper, it's becoming really clear the competition covers these incredibly complex business strategies, these profound cultural narratives that subtly kind of shape our identity.
And even, like you said, the psychological stuff, how our brain actually perceives taste differently based on branding.
It's a truly multidimensional analysis that starts to reveal how these companies became such global powerhouses.
It's tech.
The corporate battlefield. A Business Week perspective. Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's put on our Business Week hats, maybe? Focus on the market dynamics, the financial performance, the competitive strategies.
Yeah, let's get into the corporate muscle, how these giants operate on a global scale.
This is where we really see the nuts and bolts of their rivalry, the numbers.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how their different strategies lead to these vastly different financial profiles, different market valuations. It's not just about who sells more product volume.
It's about how they make money.
Precisely. And how the market, Wall Street, perceives that fundamental difference in their approach. A market dominance and financial performance.
Okay, let's start with Coca-Cola's position. I mean, it is undeniably the world's largest beverage distributor. Full stop.
No question there. The scale is just immense.
We're talking about a company that supplies over 3% of the entire world's daily beverages.
Just wrap your head around that number for a second. 3% of everything people drink globally every day.
It's staggering. And that's across more than 3,800 brands under its massive umbrella. Everything from sparkling drinks to juices, waters, teas.
A huge portfolio, but mostly focused on beverages.
Right. And when we narrow it down just to the carbonated soft drink market, the classic battleground, Coca-Cola holds about 43.7% of the global market share.
Which is a commanding lead. What's PepsiCo's share in that specific market?
PepsiCo's got about 25.9%. So Coke has a pretty significant lead in the core cola category globally.
Okay, and their financial performance reflects that dominance.
Yeah.
Right, especially the profitability.
Absolutely. Coca-Cola's net revenue in 2024 hit $47.1 billion. Their net income was $10.63 billion. That gives them a net profit margin of around 22.6%.
22.6%. That is remarkably high for a company of this scale, especially in consumer goods. How do they achieve that?
Well, their business model is the key. They primarily rely on selling high-margin concentrates and syrups to this vast network of independent global bottlers.
Ah, the concentrate model. Asset light.
Exactly. It's an incredibly efficient, lean operation. It leverages their dominant brand position and strong pricing power within the beverage market without them having to own all the bottling plants and trucks.
Smart. Okay, now let's contrast that with PepsiCo. How do their numbers look?
Okay, PepsiCo. In 2024, they generated nearly $92 billion in net revenue.
$92 billion. That's almost double Coca-Cola's revenue.
It is, but, and this is the crucial but, this massive revenue comes from their vastly diversified portfolio. Remember, they have beverages and that huge convenient foods division, Frito-Lay, Quaker.
Right, the snacks. So higher revenue, but what about the profit margin?
That tells a different story. PepsiCo's net profit margin was 10.43% in 2024, significantly lower than Coke's 22.6%.
Less than half, percentage-wise. Why the big difference?
It's largely due to the inclusion of those lower-margin snack businesses. Snacks generally have thinner margins than beverage concentrates, and they require more capital, more complex supply chains, different operational challenges.
Makes sense. Okay, so we connect this to the bigger picture, like stock performance, investor perception. How does this play out?
Great question. Coca-Cola's stock, reflecting that consistent, stable profitability, has seen roughly 40% growth since early 2021.
40%. Pretty solid.
Yeah. And its valuation reflects that stability, too. It trades at a forward price-to-earnings ratio, or PE ratio, of about 23 times. That's generally seen as a premium valuation.
Okay, just quickly for listeners, the PE ratio, it basically tells you how much investors are willing to pay for each dollar of a company's earnings. Higher PE often means higher expectations or perceived safety.
Exactly. So Coke's higher PE suggests the market really rewards its pure play model. It's focused almost entirely on that high-margin beverage core. It makes it look like a stable, defensive investment, the kind people like when the economy feels uncertain.
Okay, so stable, premium, defensive. What about PepsiCo's stock during that same period?
Well, PepsiCo's stock price only increased by about 4% during that same time frame since early 2021.
Only 4%? Compared to Coke's 40, that's a huge difference. Why such underperformance?
It's directly linked to what industry analysts have been calling temporary headwinds. Things like slowing demand in their massive Frito-Lay snacks division, and also a pretty significant product recall event over in their Quaker Foods North America division. Those things hit their numbers and investor confidence.
Gotcha. So what does PepsiCo's valuation look like now then, with that slower growth?
Well, despite those challenges, PepsiCo's forward PE ratio is currently around 17 times, which is actually below its own historical average over the last 4 years.
Interesting. So Coke gets the premium PE, PepsiCo is trading lower. What does this really highlight for investors trying to choose between them?
It starkly shows the trade-off. Coca-Cola's focused profitability, those high margins, even on lower overall revenue, gets rewarded with that premium valuation and a super stable market image. They prioritize profit efficiency, leveraging that incredible brand equity in beverages.
Right. Stick to the knitting, make good money doing it.
Pretty much. PepsiCo, on the other hand, generates way more revenue from its broader, diversified portfolio. But that comes with more operational complexity, lower overall profit margins, and exposure to issues in different sectors, like we saw with Frito-Lay and Quaker.
But could that lower valuation for PepsiCo actually be an opportunity?
That's exactly what some analysts are suggesting. They argue PepsiCo might present a more attractive investment opportunity right now because of its favorable valuation. It could be seen as a sort of contrarian investment.
Betting against the current sentiment.
Kind of. Plus, PepsiCo is a dividend king. That means they've increased their dividends for over 50 consecutive years, which shows incredible financial resilience over the long term, despite bumps in the road.
50 years of dividend growth is impressive. So the argument is?
The argument is that once these temporary headwinds subside, PepsiCo's stock price might revert to the mean, bounce back, and deliver strong returns. It really highlights a fundamental strategic choice for an investor. Do you go for the stable, premium-priced leader, or the potentially undervalued, diversified giant poised for a comeback?
Fascinating strategic dilemma there. And what about their overall financial health, like debt levels?
Yeah, the balance sheets also reinforce these different strategies. Coca-Cola has a debt-to-equity ratio of about 16%. Remember, lower is generally less risky, and their cash-to-asset ratio is around 14%.
Okay, 16% debt to equity for Coke. What about PepsiCo?
PepsiCo's debt-to-equity ratio is higher at 27%, and its cash-to-asset ratio is lower at 8%.
So Coke carries less debt relative to its equity.
Right. These numbers, again, underscore Coca-Cola's more conservative, asset-light model focused on concentrates. It lets them carry less debt and hold more liquid cash relative to their assets.
Whereas PepsiCo, with its integrated food and beverage operations, owning more factories, distribution for snacks, etc., that naturally requires more capital investment.
Exactly. Leads to higher debt levels. It's all part of that diversification strategy, B, diversification and product portfolio strategy.
Okay, so these financial differences really flow directly from their vastly different approaches to their product portfolios.
Absolutely. Coca-Cola, as we kind of touched on, is primarily a non-alcoholic beverage company, period. They've got over 500 brands, operate in more than 200 countries, but their expansion is incredibly focused. It's always within the drinks sector.
Right. They haven't branched out into, say, snacks or restaurants in a major way.
Nope. They've strategically expanded into high-growth beverage areas like low and no-sugar options. That's now a huge chunk, like 29% of their sales.
Smart move following consumer trends.
Definitely. They've also moved into energy drinks, ready-to-drink coffee through buying Costa Coffee, even protein drinks like Fairlife.
But all still liquids.
Exactly. Even their acquisitions, like buying Thumbs Up, a really popular cola in India, or Barq's root beer here in the US, it's all about solidifying their dominance within the beverage market, not broad diversification.
Their core strength, undeniably, remains those carbonated soft drinks. Coke, Diet Coke, Fanta, Sprite. That's the heartland.
Totally. Now, PepsiCo, completely different story. They are what you'd call a truly diversified conglomerate, a global leader in both convenient foods and beverages.
The two halves of the empire.
Right. Their portfolio is just vast and full of iconic names. On the snack side, Lay's, Doritos, Cheetos, dominating the aisles. Then beverages, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Gatorade. Plus, they own Quaker Oats cereals, SodaStream for home carbonation.
It's a massive range. And that really goes back to that pivotal merger we mentioned earlier, right?
Absolutely. That 1965 merger with Frito-Lay was the game changer. It fundamentally established their diversified structure from the get-go.
And they didn't stop there, did they? They kept adding.
Nope. They acquired juice brands like Tropicana and Dole, expanded further into cereals with Quaker Oats, even dabbled in dairy. The aim of this deep diversification seems crystal clear.
Which is?
To capture a much wider slice of overall consumer spending. Don't just get their drinks budget, get their snack budget, their breakfast budget.
Spread the net wide.
Yeah, and it reduces their reliance on any single product category. Like if sugary soda sales decline, maybe snack sales hold up, or Gatorade sales boom. It's a hedge.
Hedging against shifts in consumer preferences, like that big move away from sugary sodas we're seeing globally. This multi-pronged approach gives PepsiCo what analysts often call a broader moat against market fluctuations.
Meaning they have more ways to kind of weather storms compared to Coke's focus?
Potentially, yes. They aren't putting all their eggs in the beverage basket.
Okay, so this diversification strategy, it sounds smart on the surface. It offers resilience. If one part of the business struggles, another might pick up the slack.
It does, and often it works that way. However, it also introduces significant operational complexities. Managing snacks is very different from managing beverages. Different supply chains, different marketing, different manufacturing.
Right, more moving parts.
Exactly. And crucially, it can expose them to vulnerabilities in these non-core segments. We saw this just recently, didn't we?
With the Frito-Lay slowdown and the Quaker recall.
Precisely. Those issues, one in snacks, one in cereals, directly impacted PepsiCo's overall company sales and stock performance. It shows that problems, even in a seemingly stable division like Quaker Oats, can ripple through and significantly affect the entire company's financial outlook and how investors see them.
So diversification offers long-term stability maybe and broader reach, but it doesn't make you immune to short-term operational hits.
Not at all. And managing such a vast, varied portfolio requires incredibly robust oversight across all those different segments. It's a constant juggling act.
So it really boils down to a fundamental strategic difference then. Coca-Cola, Maximize profitability, maximize market control within their core beverage expertise, leverage those amazing brands and that efficient concentrate model.
Laser focus.
PepsiCo, aim for broader market presence across both food and beverage. Potentially sacrifice some depth or profit margin in one segment, like beverages compared to Coke, for wider influence and a more diversified, perhaps ultimately more stable, revenue stream over the very long haul.
Two very different blueprints for global dominance. See marketing and distribution strategies.
Okay, let's move from the boardroom and the balance sheet down to the storefront, maybe. How do they actually get these products everywhere and convince us to buy them? Marketing and distribution.
Right. And on distribution, they share an incredibly foundational strength, sheer global reach.
You're just everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Both companies operate in over 200 countries. They have these unbelievably extensive distribution networks, Coca-Cola's famous Coca-Cola system, with over 250 independent bottlers worldwide. It's a logistical marvel.
And PepsiCo's integrated supply chain for both snacks and drinks must be equally complex.
Absolutely. This place strategy, as marketers call it, ensuring your product is always within arm's reach, is critical. It means that even if you slightly prefer, say, Pepsi, but the corner store only has Coke.
You're probably buying the Coke. Availability wins.
Often, yes. So market dominance isn't just about flashy ads creating demand. It's built on this invisible infrastructure that guarantees constant product availability. It creates this massive barrier to entry, this formidable competitive moat, making it incredibly difficult for any new player to compete on scale and convenience.
That's a crucial point. Being everywhere, all the time. Okay, but beyond that shared foundation of distribution muscle, their marketing approaches are, wow, strikingly different, almost like night and day sometimes.
Very different philosophies. Coca-Cola focuses on what you might call timeless brand building.
How so?
Think about their visuals, that consistent red and white color scheme, that iconic contour bottle. They've been unwavering for over a century.
True. It barely changes.
And that consistency evokes this powerful sense of nostalgia and familiarity across generations.
Yeah.
It feels reliable, comfortable.
They target diverse audiences too, right?
Yeah.
It's not just one group.
Exactly. They use celebrity endorsements to reach youth. They have specific products like Coke Zero targeting health-conscious adults. And they're masters of localized positioning.
What do you mean by localized positioning?
Adapting their messages, sometimes even the product sweetness, to fit regional tastes and cultures, like that famous Share a Coke campaign where they put people's names on bottles that was rolled out differently in different countries.
Ah, smart. Making it feel personal and local, even though it's global.
Precisely. And their huge sponsorships like the Olympic Games, NASCAR, they just embed Coca-Cola deeper into the global consciousness as a symbol of celebration, achievement, joy.
Their core themes always seem to circle back to those ideas, right? Happiness, connection.
Always. Happiness, refreshment, and connection. Think of the classic slogans, the pause that refreshes, it's the real thing, open happiness. It all reinforces this universal appeal.
So if you had to assign it a brand archetype?
It fits perfectly with the caregiver, or the innocent archetype. They aim for universal, timeless appeal, fostering deep emotional loyalty across generations by tapping into those fundamental human desires for connection, joy, tradition. It wants to be a dependable, comforting presence in your life.
Okay, the innocent caregiver. Now, PepsiCo. What's their archetype? Feels different.
Totally different. PepsiCo really embodies youthful innovation and pop culture relevance. They're constantly playing with pricing, frequent promotional offers, discounts, bundle deals.
Yeah.
Much more aggressive on that front.
Yeah, you see more deals on Pepsi, generally.
Right, and they blend traditional advertising with really robust digital interaction. And, of course, they've relied incredibly heavily on celebrity endorsements through the decades.
Oh, yeah. Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Britney Spears, even K-pop stars like BTS more recently, always tapping into whoever is hot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tying the brand to current fame and energy. And who could forget the Pepsi Challenge?
The blind taste test. That was genius marketing back in the day.
Brilliant piece of experiential marketing, designed specifically to directly challenge the leader, engage consumers directly, and try to assert taste superiority based on that single sip.
So their brand image is much more about
Fun, youthfulness, aspiration, cultivating strong emotional connections through a different path, excitement, energy, being current.
So their archetype would be
Much more aligned with the rebel or the explorer. They position themselves as edgy, maybe a bit rebellious, definitely the younger alternative, constantly reinventing themselves, challenging the status quo, embracing novelty.
the rebel versus the innocent. That really crystallizes the difference.
It does. And it leads us to a fascinating question. Why do consumers develop such strong, almost tribal preferences for one over the other?
Yeah.
I mean, they're both brown, fizzy, sugary drinks fundamentally.
Right. Why the fierce loyalty?
It's because we as consumers identify with the values and the identities that each brand projects through this consistent marketing. It's less about the liquid, more about what choosing that brand says about you or what you aspire to. These distinct marketing approaches, rooted in those chosen archetypes, create more than just a preference. They create a sense of belonging and identity. Sustainability initiatives and future outlook.
Okay, let's pivot to something that's incredibly relevant today, something that affects pretty much every major corporation on the planet. Sustainability initiatives. ESG.
Environmental, social, and governance. Yeah, this has become absolutely central. Both Coca-Cola and PepsiCo see strong ESG performance, not just as, a nice-to-have or corporate social responsibility.
It's core strategy now.
Exactly. It's crucial for long-term value creation. It's about ensuring resource security, like water for beverages, agricultural land for snacks. It's about mitigating operational risks from things like climate change impacts. It's about meeting increasing regulatory requirements around emissions or packaging.
And importantly, it's about brand image, right?
Yep.
Consumer loyalty.
Hugely important, especially among younger generations who are much more focused on environmental and social issues. Good ESG performance is becoming a key differentiator in a crowded market. It builds trust.
So what are Coca-Cola's big commitments here? What are they actually doing?
Well, according to their latest sustainability statement from 2024, they've actually achieved something pretty remarkable already on water. They claim they've replenished more than 100% of the water used globally in their finished beverages since back in 2015.
Wow, water positive globally. That's significant.
It is. And they're aiming for 100% replenishment, specifically in over 200 high-risk, water-stressed areas by 2035. So targeting the most vulnerable places.
Okay, what about packaging? That's always a big one for beverage companies.
Huge. They're targeting 35–40% recycled content in their key packaging globally. And they plan to collect the equivalent of 70–75% of the bottles and cans they put into the market by 2035.
Collection targets are key for circularity and emissions, climate change.
Yep, they're committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions across all three scopes. We should probably explain scopes quickly to align with a 1.5 degrees C global warming pathway by 2035. And they're also supporting sustainable agriculture initiatives in their supply chain.
Okay, so scopes. Scope 1, 2, 3. What's the quick breakdown?
Right, so Scope 1 emissions are direct emissions from sources the company owns or controls. Think factory boilers, company vehicles.
Got it. Direct stuff.
Scope 2 are indirect emissions from generating the electricity, heat, or steam the company purchases.
Okay, the power they buy.
And Scope 3, that's the big one. It includes all other indirect emissions that occur in a company's value chain, both upstream like growing ingredients, supplier transportation, and downstream like consumer use of the product, end-of-life disposal of packaging.
So Scope 3 covers pretty much everything else, the whole life cycle.
Exactly. And for companies like Coke and Pepsi, Scope 3 is usually the vast majority of their total footprint, and definitely the hardest part to measure and reduce because it involves so many external partners and consumer behaviors.
Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so those are Coke's goals. What about PepsiCo, their PepsiCo Positive or Pep Plus strategy?
Equally ambitious, covering similar ground. On agriculture, which is huge for them with Frito-Lay and Quaker, they've expanded their regenerative agriculture target to 10 million acres by 2030. They reported hitting about 3.5 million acres by 2024.
Regenerative ag focuses on soil health, biodiversity, important stuff.
Very. On emissions, they've also updated their Scope 1, 2, and 3 targets to align with that 1.5 degrees C pathway, and they have a longer-term goal of net zero emissions by 2050.
And packaging for PepsiCo.
Also a major focus. They've adjusted their targets somewhat, focusing implementation on key markets initially. They're working on reducing virgin plastic use and driving reuse models. Though, interestingly, they did acknowledge removing an explicit global reuse target recently, citing external factors.
Oh, what does that mean? Removed a reuse target.
Well, they stated that progress on reuse specifically will take more time, depending on the realities of key global enablers such as recycling and reuse infrastructure. Which brings us to a really important point.
What's that?
This highlights a critical systemic challenge that all these big multinationals face. While both companies are making huge commitments, investing billions, PepsiCo openly acknowledging that their ability to hit a reuse target depends heavily on external factors like global infrastructure. That's incredibly telling.
So it's not entirely within their control, even if they want it to be.
Exactly. A company's ability to achieve really ambitious sustainability goals, especially around things like packaging circularity or deep decarbonization, is often limited by factors far beyond their direct control.
Like what?
Think about it. If global recycling infrastructure isn't good enough or isn't harmonized across regions, if renewable energy grids aren't built out fast enough to power their factories and supply chains, if government policies don't actively support circular economy models through incentives or regulations,
Then even the most committed company is going to struggle to hit those big goals, like net zero or full circularity.
precisely, achieving true net zero or a robust circular economy requires more than just internal corporate investment and innovation. It demands large-scale cross-sector collaboration, companies working together, working with governments, with NGOs. It needs public-private partnerships and strong government policies to create the necessary enabling environment. It's a much bigger, more complex puzzle than any single company can solve alone. It really is a collective responsibility. 3, cultural perspective. Beyond the beverage.
Okay, let's zoom out even further now. Let's really get into the cultural perspective, because this is where the story gets incredibly rich, I think. It reveals how these brands aren't just, products we buy off a shelf.
No, they're way more than that. They become integral parts of our lives, our memories, our collective identity even.
Yeah, we're moving beyond the financial reports and the corporate strategy now into the realm of social observation, cultural impact.
And this is where the true magic, and sometimes, as we'll see, the true risk of global branding really lies. It's fascinating how deeply intertwined these companies have become with our identity, our memories, our collective consciousness. It reveals the incredible power of brand identity and how it evolves. Or maybe sometimes how it doesn't evolve over time. Brand identity and evolution.
Let's start with Coca-Cola again. Their brand identity is it's like a timeless lesson in enduring appeal, isn't it?
Absolutely. Their consistency is just unwavering. That iconic red and white color scheme, that distinctive contour bottle shape. They've basically maintained that core visual identity since 1916.
Over 100 years of the same basic look. That's incredible brand discipline.
It is. And that unwavering consistency creates this incredibly powerful sense of nostalgia and familiarity. It connects grandparents, parents, and kids through a shared visual language. It feels reliable, comforting, unchanging in a world that changes constantly.
And their slogans reinforce that too, right? They always seem to hit those same notes.
Always. From the pause that refreshes way back when to it's the real thing to open happiness.
Yeah.
They consistently reinforce these universal images of joy, refreshment, hospitality, togetherness.
They've managed to just be a constant.
And it goes even deeper than just slogans and logos. Coca-Cola has achieved this profound cultural integration. Think about its kind of surprising role in shaping the modern image of Santa Claus back in the 1930s.
Yeah, the Haddon Sundblom illustrations for Coke ads.
Exactly. Those advertising campaigns really helped standardize Santa's look, the red suit, the jolly demeanor in popular culture. It wasn't that they invented that look, but they popularized and cemented it, forever linking Coke with that feeling of holiday warmth, generosity, and tradition.
Solidifying Coke's status as a symbol of shared happiness.
Precisely. So their brand archetype remains consistently the innocent or the caregiver. They aim for that broad, cross-generational appeal. They foster lasting, almost subconscious brand preference by tapping into fundamental human desires for connection, comfort, and simple joys.
Okay, the innocent caregiver, built on timeless consistency. Now, PepsiCo, definitely a different story. You called them a lesson in adaptability.
Yeah, their brand identity is really centered on youthful vibrancy and aspiration. They're constantly evolving.
How so? We still recognize Pepsi.
Well, while they've generally maintained the red, white, and blue color palette as their core, they regularly update their packaging design, their typography, their logo, tweaking the visual identity to align with what they perceive as contemporary tastes. It's a much more dynamic approach.
Trying to stay fresh, stay current.
Exactly. And interestingly, if you look way back, their early marketing was all over the place. They actually tried focusing on supposed health benefits initially.
Health benefits for Pepsi.
Yep. Before they hit on that winning twice the quantity for 5 cents strategy during the Depression, which was purely about value.
Wow, so they've pivoted quite a bit over the years.
Constantly. Then they shifted again, emphasizing an energy boost, positioning themselves as that edgy and rebellious brand, the younger alternative to the established giant Coke.
Right, the challenger brand.
Campaigns like Live for Now, and, as we mentioned, those extensive celebrity endorsements. Michael Jackson's huge deal in the 80s, Beyoncé, Britney Spears later on, all underscore this dynamic pop culture-driven image. They want to be associated with youth, energy, what's happening now.
So their brand archetype is clearly different.
Clearly the rebel, or the explorer, embracing novelty, excitement, individuality, targeting a dynamic, often younger demographic that wants to challenge norms and be seen as different. They want to be the choice for those who defy convention, who live for the moment.
Okay, this creates a really interesting strategic tension, doesn't it? You have Coca-Cola's unchanging style, which builds trust, leverages nostalgia, makes it feel like this comforting constant in our lives.
The reliable friend.
And then you have PepsiCo's constant pursuit of freshness through evolution, which helps it theoretically remain relevant to new generations and tap into current trends.
The cool, exciting newcomer, even though they're also over 100 years old.
Right. But what are the risks associated with these very different approaches? Is one inherently better?
That's a great question, and there are definitely risks to both. While Pepsi's adaptability allows it to keep pace with trends and potentially capture the youth market more effectively at times, too much change, too many logo redesigns, too many shifts in messaging that can actually confuse consumers over the long term.
You risk diluting your core identity, losing that instant recognition.
Exactly. If you change too often, people might not know what you stand for anymore, or they might lose that emotional connection built over time. You don't want to lose your core fans while chasing new ones.
Okay, so that's the risk for Pepsi. What about Coke? Is there a risk in being too consistent?
Absolutely. The risk for Coca-Cola is becoming seen as old-fashioned, maybe even irrelevant. If they don't innovate enough, they have to innovate within their classic framework. Think about new flavors like Coke Zero Sugar, or diversifying into related beverage categories like water or coffee, without ever diluting that core, iconic image. It's a very delicate balancing act for them.
Don't mess with the secret formula, literally or figuratively.
Pretty much. This fundamental tension between consistency and evolution, between heritage and relevance, is something all major brands grapple with. How they manage that tension is absolutely crucial for their long-term health and market relevance. B, cultural integration and societal impact.
Okay, let's dig deeper into cultural integration, because this feels like an area where Coca-Cola has achieved something truly remarkable. It's more than just a brand. It's a global cultural icon.
It really has. It's profoundly transcended its identity as just a beverage.
Yeah.
It's become this universal symbol of, celebration, joy, togetherness.
Its cultural embeddedness is so deep that people even coined that term back in the 50s and 60s, Coca colonization.
Right. That term, often used critically, reflects Coke's role as this pervasive cultural ambassador, a symbol of American influence, capitalism, and lifestyle spreading across the globe, for better or worse, depending on your perspective.
And the bottle, the logo, they've inspired art, design.
Countless works of art and design worldwide. Andy Warhol, obviously, but many others too. And during World War II, Coca-Cola made a very strategic decision to ensure that every man in uniform gets a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents, wherever he is and whatever it costs the company.
Wow. That must have cemented its global reach and its image as quintessentially American.
Absolutely. It became a powerful symbol of home, of American culture, for soldiers stationed all over the world. And it established bottling plants globally to support that effort, which then stayed after the war.
We see its cultural presence in so many everyday examples, too, right?
Oh, definitely. Things like drinking Coca-Cola during Chinese New Year celebrations, associating it with prosperity, or its almost ubiquitous presence at family gatherings and fiestas in Latin America. It's just there, part of the fabric.
So its cultural impact seems to stem mostly from this very organic, very consistent association with universally positive emotions and traditions built up over decades and decades.
Largely, yes, which has generally provided it with a remarkably stable and often less controversial brand image compared to some other global giants. It's deeply woven into the fabric of daily life in so many places. It's been called America's most American thing, which means it also gets tangled up in geopolitical narratives sometimes, making it more than just a commercial product, but a kind of socio-political symbol, whether Coke intends that or not.
Okay, so Coke's cultural integration seems deep, organic, maybe somewhat passive now. PepsiCo, in its pursuit of youthfulness and relevance, seems to take a much more active approach to cultural integration, right?
Very active. They actively seek to tap into the cultural zeitgeist, as they say. They do this through those extensive pop culture connections we talked about. The music stars, the athletes, high-profile celebrity endorsements have been a cornerstone of their strategy for decades.
And big event sponsorships, like the Super Bowl halftime show. That's peak pop culture.
Exactly. It's about associating Pepsi with energy, excitement, entertainment, what's trending right now. They often position themselves, still, as the underdog challenging the established leader, which has its own cultural resonance, especially in America. It appeals to a certain segment of consumers who like to root for the challenger.
But this aggressive pursuit of cultural relevance, of trying to be part of the conversation,
Yeah.
it also carries significant risks, doesn't it?
Huge risks. And this is a crucial learning point, I think, for any brand operating today. The 2017 Kendall Jenner advertisement is the starkest example for Pepsi.
Oh boy, that ad. It's still infamous.
Rightfully so. It attempted to somehow link PepsiCo with ongoing social justice movements, specifically imagery evoking the Black Lives Matter protests. And it faced immediate, intense, and widespread backlash.
People accused it of trivializing social justice movements, of being incredibly tone-deaf.
Exactly. And of exploiting activism for commercial gain. It was seen as deeply inauthentic and opportunistic.
That incident really highlighted a critical misstep in cultural sensitivity, didn't it? It showed the profound dangers of wading into complex social issues without genuine understanding or credibility. It really damaged the reputation, at least for a while.
Indeed it did. It serves as a powerful cautionary tale. While cultural integration is vital for modern brands to stay relevant, the manner of that integration is absolutely key.
So Coke's strategy seems safer in that regard, becoming a timeless icon through those organic, positive associations?
It certainly offers more stability and a more universal, less controversial appeal, generally speaking. PepsiCo's more agile, trend-driven approach allows it to potentially gain relevance very quickly, connect with specific demographics, but it also exposes it much more directly to the fluctuations and potential pitfalls of the contemporary social and political landscape.
It's a tightrope.
Absolutely. Brands today have to walk this incredibly fine line between achieving cultural relevance and being perceived as opportunistic, shallow, or insensitive. Any hint of inauthentic engagement, especially around sensitive social issues, can severely damage brand reputation and erode consumer trust, sometimes taking years to recover from. It's high stakes. C, the Pepsi Paradox and taste perception. Okay, this brings us to one of the most fascinating, almost counterintuitive aspects of this whole rivalry. It really dives deep into the psychology of taste and branding, the famous Pepsi Paradox.
Yes, I've heard about this. Explain it for us.
Sure. It's a phenomenon that's been observed in numerous scientific studies and, of course, in those infamous Pepsi Challenge blind taste tests over the decades. Here's the paradox. When consumers don't know which brand they're drinking when it's a truly blind test, just tasting the liquid,
They often prefer Pepsi.
they often express a preference for Pepsi, yes. Its slightly sweeter, sharper taste tends to win in single-sip tests. However, here's the paradox part. Once the brand labels are revealed, the vast majority of people switch their stated preference. Sometimes they even seem to genuinely perceive the taste differently, now saying they prefer Coca-Cola.
Wow. So knowing the brand actually changes their preference, potentially even their perception of the taste itself. Why does that happen? That seems crazy.
It does seem crazy, but neurological research actually provides some compelling evidence for why. Using brain scanning techniques like fMRI.
Okay, looking inside people's heads while they drink cola.
Basically, yes. In blind taste tests, both Pepsi and Coke elicit pretty similar activity in the parts of the brain associated with basic taste perception. Makes sense, they are similar drinks.
Right.
But here's the kicker. When the brand cues are introduced, especially when people see that iconic Coca-Cola red label or the contour bottle shape, it triggers significantly stronger activity in specific brain regions.
Which region?
Notably, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is a key area heavily involved in processing reward, value, and positive emotion. And also in the amygdala, which is often considered our brain's emotional center, processing things like memory and emotional responses.
So seeing the Coke brand literally lights up the reward and emotion centers of the brain more strongly than just tasting the liquid or seeing the Pepsi brand.
That's what the research suggests. It's not just about the inherent taste hitting your tongue, it's about how your brain responds to the powerful, deeply ingrained cultural associations, memories, and emotional responses you have tied to the brand itself.
That is absolutely fascinating. It proves that branding isn't just superficial marketing fluff. It actually changes how we experience things.
It absolutely proves that brand cues, the logo, the colors, the history, elicit these powerful emotional and reward responses that can literally override our pure objective sensory input, like taste preference in a blind test. It's a stunning testament to the long-term power of marketing and brand building.
But wait, are there actually real taste differences between them? Or is it all in our heads, triggered by the branding?
Good question. Despite this paradox and the power of branding, there are indeed discernible, albeit subtle, chemical differences in their formulations. While they might seem almost identical to many casual drinkers, these quantitative differences do lead to distinct mouthfeels and flavor profiles if you pay close attention.
Okay, so let's break down those differences. What's the typical Pepsi flavor profile?
So Pepsi's formula contains citric acid, which isn't typically listed in Coke's ingredients. That gives it a slight citrusy note. And crucially, Pepsi generally has a slightly higher sugar content, typically around 31 grams per 12-ounce can, compared to Coca-Cola's 39 grams.
Okay, more sugar plus citric acid. What does that result in taste-wise?
It results in what's often described as a more pronounced citrusy tang, a sharper, maybe livelier initial taste, and sometimes a puckering aftertaste. The author Malcolm Gladwell famously wrote about this, noting that Pepsi's initial sweet burst tends to dissipate after drinking a whole can.
So it's like it's optimized for that initial hit, that single sip in the taste test.
That's the theory many people subscribe to. It gives a stronger first impression, which is great for a quick comparison test.
Okay, so what about Coca-Cola's flavor profile then? How does it differ?
Coca-Cola's profile is generally described differently. Interestingly, it actually contains more sodium, roughly twice as much as Pepsi, surprisingly.
More salt. Why?
It likely contributes to balancing the sweetness and enhancing other flavors. The overall profile is often described as milder, maybe more vanilla-like, or even hinting at cinnamon or other spices. It has a distinct bite, some say, and maybe a slightly drier finish compared to Pepsi sweetness.
So less aggressive sweetness, perhaps?
Potentially.
Mm.
The argument is that this slightly less aggressive sweetness, perhaps balanced by the sodium and other flavor notes, might be more appealing when you're consuming an entire serving, like a whole can or bottle.
Yeah.
It doesn't overwhelm the palate as quickly over time.
So maybe Coke is formulated more for sustained drinking enjoyment rather than just the initial sip impact.
That could be a deliberate formulation choice, yes. Designing for different consumption scenarios, the quick taste challenge, versus finishing the whole drink. It's fascinating how much subtle chemistry might be involved.
And it's not just the liquid itself, right? Doesn't the container even make a difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, and sometimes backed by science, the container material can subtly influence the taste experience. Glass bottles are often considered superior by connoisseurs.
Why glass?
Because glass is relatively inert, it's less likely to interact with the liquid, it prevents carbonation from escaping as quickly as plastic might, and it doesn't potentially leach any subtle flavors from the container itself, like aluminum cans or plastic bottles sometimes can.
Interesting. So next time you grab a soda, maybe pay attention to the bottle material, too.
It could make a difference. So what does all of this whole Pepsi paradox and taste difference thing really mean for you, the listener, the consumer?
Yeah, what's the big takeaway?
The Pepsi Paradox is just this incredibly powerful real-world example of how brand equity painstakingly built over decades through consistent marketing, deep cultural embedding, compelling emotional storytelling can create such strong loyalty that it literally overrides our immediate sensory input. Our brains are wired for stories and associations.
It underscores that investing heavily in brand building yields a much more resilient, more powerful competitive advantage than simply trying to win on product superiority based on taste alone. The brand becomes part of the product.
Exactly. And those differing taste profiles also suggest these weren't accidental differences. They likely reflect deliberate formulation choices aimed at different consumption scenarios, that quick sip win versus the full serving satisfaction. It shows just how much deep thought, chemistry, and marketing psychology goes into even these seemingly simple everyday drinks. It's a fascinating insight into our own consumer behavior and the profound power of the subconscious mind in shaping our preferences.
A redefined competition.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just crystal clear that the cola wars are so much more than just a simple product battle between two drinks.
Absolutely. They represent this comprehensive, ongoing clash of business models, fundamentally different brand philosophies, and massive cultural influence that has shaped the consumer landscape for well over a century.
When we look at Coca-Cola, Its enduring strength really seems rooted in that unwavering brand heritage, its ability to connect emotionally on a global scale, and its sheer dominance in that core carbonated beverage market.
Which translates, as we saw, into that premium valuation from investors and consistently stable profitability. It's the classic timeless image, a symbol of happiness, tradition, deeply embedded into global culture. The reliable giant.
PepsiCo, on the other hand, has really carved its path through that bold strategy of diversification, expanding into a much broader range of food and beverage categories.
Right. Their agile, consistently youth-oriented marketing, coupled with a demonstrated willingness to innovate and adapt their image, has allowed them to remain incredibly relevant in a constantly changing market. They project a more dynamic, sometimes disruptive image, constantly trying to attract new generations, often through those big pop culture connections and celebrity endorsements. The energetic challenger.
But as we discussed with that Kendall Jenner ad fiasco, that relentless pursuit of trendiness and cultural relevance also comes with significant inherent risks. It really highlights the severe consequences that can happen with inauthentic cultural engagement, especially when dealing with sensitive social issues.
It's a constant tightrope walk for any major brand trying to stay relevant today, especially one like Texaco that actively courts the zeitgeist.
In the Pepsi Paradox, that phenomenon really serves as such a powerful microcosm of this entire rivalry, doesn't it?
It really does. It illustrates so clearly how deeply ingrained brand loyalty and emotional connection can literally transcend immediate product attributes, even perceived taste superiority in a blind test.
The neuroscience findings just confirm it. Seeing the brand label itself can trigger reward and emotional responses in the brain. It attests to the critical, almost subconscious role that brand equity plays in shaping our choices every day.
And looking ahead, the battlefield isn't static, is it? The beverage and food industries are constantly evolving.
Massively. Both companies are actively responding to these huge shifts in consumer preferences, that growing demand for healthier options, low sugar, no sugar drinks.
And of course, that increasing focus from consumers, investors, and regulators on sustainable products and ethical business practices, ESG is no longer optional.
So the future of this cola war, it seems like it will undoubtedly involve continued product innovation, probably fierce competition in developing and emerging markets where growth potential is huge.
Absolutely. And an ever-increasing emphasis on ESG performance, not just as a cost, but as a key driver of brand value, investor confidence, and consumer loyalty. The battleground keeps expanding and changing.
It demands incredible strategic agility and a really profound understanding of culture from these two global giants if they want to maintain their dominance for another century.
It really does. The game is constantly being redefined.
So this leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to maybe consider. How much of what you choose to buy, particularly when it comes to these really iconic brands like Coke or Pepsi, is truly about the product itself, its taste, its ingredients, its features?
Versus how much is it about the story you're buying into, the identity it projects?
Yeah, think about your own consumer choices. Are they influenced by more than just taste? Are they driven by nostalgia, by a sense of identity, by these powerful, often unseen forces of brand storytelling that these companies have masterfully woven for decades? How much is the product, and how much is the story?
It's certainly something to chew on, or perhaps sip on the next time you reach for a cold drink.
Thanks for tuning into this deep dive. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell.